So rainforests in Australia, of course, are spread pretty thinly according to rainfall and topography and refusal habitats. And those habitats are secreted along the eastern escarpment, in the eastern ranges, and in pockets where there's moist forest refugia. And the very best of those forests are in the deepest refugia. And one of the most important places in Australia for the refusal, the retreat place for most of the Gondwanan lineages is the nightcap area. So along the edge of Huonbrook and the valley here, that's the sort of impact that we see. Those cliff areas of eucalyptus, the New England blackbutt that runs down towards the blackbutt Eucalyptus piloraris, have been cooked. So the fire's come up from underneath and has roasted those ridgelines. But of course eucalyptus is adapted to fire. So what we see already in those areas is epicormic growth, resprouting, and already some reseeding, particularly of things like acacia. So in itself problematic, and I'll talk about that in a little while. So for the eucalypt forest, this is a major event, and in some of these places there has been no fire since European settlement, even in the eucalypt forest. But in some of these areas there has been logging, and that logging has also had some repercussions. But what we're really talking about are our ancient rainforests. Previously, that slide said in the modern world. Now we're confronted with ancient rainforests in a changing world. We know it was changing. We knew it. We've talked about it, the implications of climate change, the implications of climatic events, extreme cycles of climate. But did we really expect to see the scale of what we saw in these events? And I've got to be honest with you, no, I didn't. I expected to see change over time. I expected to see some dramatic events. But I think the scale of these events, both locally and more broadly, were way beyond anything that we might have thought was going to happen. To be honest, we should have known. We should have understood that. The predictions were there, the information was there, the predictions about climate extremes and convergences was there. But I think in many ways we all try not to believe that it's really true. So again, these are some of the values that we have in the nightcap, these magnificent old growth trees, more than 90% of which of course have already been cleared by logging. Deliberately cleared, ring-barked, selected against and replaced with smaller sized woods, and in many cases the rainforest around them also cleared to make way for more intensive silviculture, more intensive stocking of eucalyptus. The repercussions of that, of course, were also evident in the fireground and in the areas surrounding it, and the implications were also there in terms of the impacts on the core rainforest refugia. So sadly, having lost more than 90% to history, logging and other causes, we end up losing maybe 10, 20, 30% more of these last of the old trees. And just think about that. This is a forest that has hollow-dependent species. Once upon a time, greater gliders were prevalent. Powerful owls moved through the forest hunting them. We had many other hollow-dependent species. All of those species are in incredible trouble already across the whole of the Australian continent because of the loss of hollows. In this area, they've always been, since forestry management was extant, have been in real trouble. We're down to the last 10%, we're now down to less than that. And those trees, as you can see, are getting older. So replacing them is not something that we will see in our lifetimes or your children's lifetimes. That's a process that takes many hundreds of years. So the implications of what we've done already before the fire are already major. The distribution of rainforests in our area is limited, despite the fact that we think of ourselves as a rainforest area, think of ourselves as surrounded by rainforest and beautiful areas. The tragedy is, of course, that a good deal of that, and particularly on the lowlands, has already been cleared. So 99% of the lowlands is already gone. So what we have left of that is a very small amount. In the uplands, despite the fact that those areas look relatively large, let me just remind you that the whole of the Australian rainforest fits into a circle with a 100-kilometre radius. So if you go walking in the biggest rainforests in Australia, which I've done, then if you go for a 10-day hike, which I used to do regularly, you'd have to turn around in circles and cut back and do all those sorts of things to actually stay within rainforest for that period of time. So despite the fact that when we look at the wet tropics and look at these areas, we think, wow, huge areas of forest, that is not the case. These are the last tiny vestiges of that incredibly important evolutionary history that's part of our culture, was part of Indigenous culture, and it's part of country.